Support for WUWM podcasts comes from Potawatomi Casino Hotel Milwaukee, home to 24/7 excitement, dining, and an on-site hotel at 1721 West Canal Street. More information at potawatomi.com.
You're listening to Lake Effect Spotlight from WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR station. Here's one of our favorite conversations about the people, places, and organizations that shape Milwaukee.
Over the past year, the city of Milwaukee has been wrestling with the use of facial recognition technology. This is tech that some law enforcement agencies use to assist in investigations, using surveillance footage. The Milwaukee Police Department has used the technology without clear guidelines in place, and community members have pushed back. This debate has played out online, in the streets, and in boardrooms inside City Hall. WUWM reporters Eddie Morales and Jimmy Gutierrez trace the recent battle over facial recognition technology and examine how the community has responded.
So there's a story we've been keeping an eye out for, I feel like the last year or so, which a lot of people have been following. A lot of people have been going to community meetings, speaking up in those meetings, and we're talking about FRT, facial recognition technology.
Right. So a quick explainer. FRT is basically tech that some law enforcement agencies use to assist in investigations, and that uses surveillance footage. Think security cameras, ring cams, things like that. Mm-hmm. That compares it to a database of photos like mugshots, so all to identify suspects. But a lot of agencies have used that tech without guardrails.
Right, and Milwaukee is no different, which, if we're just going to get into it, let's rewind to the Fire and Police Commission meeting from February 5th of this year.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Okay, as you can kind of hear, the room inside City Hall is packed. The hallway leading into that room is packed. And that's where I found tables set up with food and water, and that should have been a dead giveaway that this meeting would last 5 hours.
As I mentioned, we will begin with item number 1, public comment. For those who would like to speak.
One reason why there were so many people was because a bunch of community organizations and just regular people following this issue had circled this date. FRT was on the agenda, and Milwaukee Police Department brass would be there to talk about it.
And some background on MPD's FRT policy at the time was that we knew they had used it in the past, in a limited number of cases.
Well, that is what we thought, until Commissioner Chrissy Fung started to question police leadership.
Okay, thank you. I'm a little confused. As you mentioned, you had sent...
She asked Chief Jeff Norman about the department's past use. Then MPD Chief of Staff Heather Huff stepped in. And then finally, Fung got to Paul Lau, Department Inspector. And there was a revelation.
Okay, thank you. Just to clarify, is the practice still continuing?
As needed right now, we are using, yes.
What we learned that night is not only had MPD been using or borrowing FRT in investigations basically this whole time, they've done so without any internal procedures.
I did not know prior to just now that you guys were still borrowing FRT, and I don't think that's acceptable.
This is Bree Spencer, another FPC commissioner.
My trust is diminished. I don't think this is the right move. I feel like and to me, more than the minutia of FRT, even if FRT was the best thing ever, which it's not, if the community was coming with this energy to tell me they didn't want this, then that's it for me.
So the meeting eventually ends, and the next day, big news drops.
Yeah, MPD walked back their policy, stating basically that they were putting to bed any use or conversations about FRT use by the department, for now. And that's where we are now, about 2 months after the Fire and Police Commission meeting. So we wanted to look at how this happened, which could be one of the most successful community organizing efforts in recent history. How did the community win their fight against FRT?
When we talk about community members and organizations pushing against MPD's FRT use, there is someone you should meet.
My name is Amanda Merkway, and I am the advocacy director at the ACLU of Wisconsin.
Amanda has been following the fallout of FRT in other cities for years.
Folks were faced with wrongful arrests and sometimes incarcerated for a period of time because of a false facial recognition hit.
She talked about Detroit, where there have been a number of wrongful arrests, which has cost the city in litigation and bad press. There's Robert Williams, one of the first cases, who spent 30 hours in jail for a false match. Portia Woodruff had police show up at her door, handcuff her as she was getting her daughters ready for school. At the time, she was also 8 months pregnant. Amanda says a common problem with this technology is that it's just not really good at its job, which is identifying people. And we know that there is profound racial bias.
And so it wasn't a coincidence that almost every single one of the known false matches, so to speak, from FRT that led to wrongful arrests were of Black people.
While all this is going on in Detroit, things seemed quiet in Milwaukee. That was until Amanda got a call. An
attorney friend of mine knew that I was, thinking about facial recognition and who's using it, and sent a Court of Appeals case, a Wisconsin Court of Appeals case to me.
This is in 2024.
And they're like, hey, didn't you say that MPD has said they're not using FRT? Well, here, it looks like they are.
This case mentioned that FRT was used in the process of an investigation. Amanda and the ACLU start to get curious. Then last year at a Fire and Police Commission meeting in April, things start to come out.
At that meeting, it was, revealed that MPD wanted to sign a contract with this private company, Biometrica, to get their own facial recognition search software. And in this pitch, MPD admitted that they had been using FRT indirectly by sending requests to other law enforcement agencies for, I think the quote from that meeting was 2 to 3 years.
2 to 3 years?
Yeah, without anyone really in the city knowing about this. And like we said, without any policy in place. In May, a month later, 11 alders send a letter to Chief Norman opposing FRT. That same month, there was an Equal Rights Commission meeting where MPD has a presentation of FRT, which was received not well. So bad, actually, that a few weeks later, the commission unanimously opposed FRT in the hands of local police. Eddie, are you tired yet?
I mean, this is a lot. But I covered that meeting and remember the agreement between Biometrica and MPD was something like 2 FRT licenses. Mm-hmm. And in exchange, MPD would share 2.5 million booking photos from Milwaukee.
Yeah, and we are still going. So in November, ACLU learns that FRT was used in 18 cases to some degree. And that brings us back to February of this year at the Fire and Police Commission meeting in the packed room where we find out that MPD has been using or borrowing FRT this whole time.
So the ACLU put in all this work to figure out if and how MPD was using FRT, the community rallies, including electeds. And finally, we get MPD's moratorium on FRT. There's someone else who was in that February meeting we should meet.
We are a 173-year-old principled organization that has stood up for democracy and supporting social infrastructure, and we will continue to be that thing.
This is Emilio De Torre, executive director of the Milwaukee Turners, the oldest civic group in the city. He says that Turners started having conversations about FRT and potential uses almost 5 years ago.
In early 2024, we began to pay more attention to the Fire and Police Commission, and we formalized our program to kind of analyze what power the Fire and Police Commission had from a supervisory point of view over the Milwaukee Police Department, the fire department post Act 12.
Some context is that Act 12 was this revenue sharing agreement that the city had entered with the state that, amongst other controversial issues within this act, really took away power from the Fire and Police Commission having any sort of say policy-wise for MPD.
And our commission was nationally recognized for the community control or input. So we're in this new era trying to define what this body can and can't do. Anyways, Emilio has an idea of why so many people came together over this issue and why they've been showing up meeting after meeting for the past year. He calls it a cross-pollination of concern.
Because Milwaukee is a segregated city and people have this ideological and sometimes cultural or ethnic segregation, they're aligning over issues of being righteously angry that they're being surveilled and that there's this presumption of guilt.
Personally, he also has huge concerns with how this data is being shared, not just amongst local jurisdictions, but with federal agencies.
I believe that the intention of this surveillance equipment is right there in its name. It's flock. They're implying we're sheep and we need to be shepherded. And that is anathema to what the identity of an American should be.
I mean, Emilio and other members of the Turners were at almost every FPC meeting I feel like you or I had followed over the past year. Also, should be said that FPC Commissioner Chrissy Fung works for Turner, so they have a huge connection. You know, we've spent a lot of time focusing on Milwaukee Police, but there's another law enforcement agency in Milwaukee.
The Milwaukee County Sheriff's Department.
Milwaukee County Sheriff's Department, who, it turns out, has also been flirting with FRT and some of the same providers as MPD.
The sheriff's office is not necessarily subject to the same level of attention.
This is Mike Carrier. He is a professor at MSOE and also volunteers on Milwaukee Sheriff's Community Advisory Board.
It's essentially a group of community leaders who are coming together to, it's kind of in the name of it, advise the sheriff's office. There's questions asked to the committee. We can bring our own questions or concerns.
Do they have any policy power? Or is it, for lack of a better word, toothless?
Yeah, completely toothless. But this board is really new, so it's kind of all just getting figured out. Anyways, in their February board meeting, it comes out that Sheriff Danita Ball signed a kind of exploratory agreement with Biometrica, the FRT provider. Mike hears this and has questions.
Obviously led me, at least personally, to rethink, well, what had that timeline up to that February meeting actually been like? And who was notified of the decision to enter that letter of intent and who had to be? Because I'm not quite sure how this actually works.
As the meeting goes on, he says it doesn't sound like they were trying to be sneaky about this letter, but maybe they didn't see it as a big deal, which we know they were very wrong because the city is still buzzing from that Fire and Police Commission meeting. Anyways, not long after that, the Sheriff's Department announces that it is not moving forward with their relationship with Biometrica.
So it's a wrap?
It kind of sounds like it, and I asked Mike how he read that decision and if it had anything to do at all with the community organizing against MPD's use of FRT.
Yeah, and that's a really good question because I'm not entirely sure. We haven't had a meeting since that February announcement or proclamation that this letter of intent had been signed. The next meeting is on the books for March. So what's happened in between has been, for me, kind of a mystery.
So MPD's last public comment on this is their issued moratorium. The Sheriff's Department said they're not moving forward, so it seems like a win for organizers, right?
So when it comes to the Sheriff's Department, the advisory board's March meeting was canceled, so Mike won't know more about the sheriff's position until their April meeting, which is open to the public like the FPC meetings. Mike did say he thinks the police department's decision did have some kind of impact on the sheriff's decision. So it feels like community organizers and the people who have been fighting this really did make it happen, at least for now.
True, because the other thing we both heard throughout the year from MPD was that they see FRT as a, quote, useful tool for investigations. And even with the public pressure, Chief Norman has said basically in that February FPC meeting that it's almost inevitable it'll become a part of their toolkit.
And that's what Amanda Merkway and the ACLU are planning on. Emilio and Turner's too. So they're going to keep watching this. And same with the other community groups I spoke with who've been faithfully showing up to these meetings, among other groups, Milwaukee Alliance and Milwaukee for Palestine.
Yeah, I think the final thing to bring up here is that we did hear from a couple of the commissioners on the Fire and Police Commission. They said that when the public shows up and packs a room like it did earlier this year and all last year, it absolutely changes things. It changes the power dynamics. So even though the FPC has lost a lot of its power and the Sheriff's Advisory Board is there to simply advise, people showing up and speaking out does make a difference.
That was WUWM's Eddie Morales and Jimmy Gutierrez reporting.
Lake Effect is a daily talk show on WUWM, Milwaukee's local NPR station. It's a show where we share the stories about the people, places, and organizations that shape the city. If you enjoyed this episode of Lake Effect Spotlight, subscribe to the podcast. You can find all of Lake Effect's conversations at WUWM.com/Lake Effect, and we're on the radio Monday through Friday at noon on 89.7.